Today we're looking at Jupiter through all 12 signs and houses. If you saw last week's episode, you'll know that Jupiter is the planet of growth, wisdom, opportunity, and the sacred spiritual practice of saying yes before checking whether there's room in the car. In the chart, Jupiter shows where life wants to expand. It's where we seek meaning, develop faith, look for possibility, and occasionally make things much bigger than anyone sensibly asked for. But Jupiter doesn't work the same way for everyone. First, we'll look at Jupiter in the signs, which shows us how he behaves. Then we'll look at Jupiter in the houses, which shows us where that generous, optimistic, buffet-adjacent Jupiter energy tends to show up in life. So if Jupiter is the actor, the sign is the character he's playing, and the house is the stage. In this case, the stage is very large, slightly overbooked, and has a man in a velvet jacket shouting,
"There's plenty for everyone,"
while quietly ordering another 3 courses. So let's begin by sending Jupiter around the zodiac to see what happens when the king of the gods gets to play all 12 roles. First up, we have Jupiter in Aries, where the great planet of growth has been handed a sword, a protein shake, and an abject lack of patience. Here, Jupiter has to express himself through the sign of action, competition, and doing something immediately, because thinking about it first is boring. At its best, this can be brave, inspiring, and full of initiative. Jupiter in Aries believes that life rewards boldness, and very often it does. But the flip side is that confidence becomes reckless. Jupiter already likes to say yes, and Aries likes to say yes before it's finished listening to the question.
"Fortune favours the bold."
Fantastic, I've already started.
Started what?
No idea, but it's going brilliantly. Next, we have Jupiter in Taurus, where the great planet of growth has been given a cushion, a cheese board, and a savings account with a good interest rate. Here, Jupiter expresses himself through the sign of money, comfort, pleasure, and refusing to rush unless the house is on fire. This can be generous and wonderfully steady. It can bring luck through patience. But the downside is indulgence. Jupiter likes more, Taurus likes nice things, and together they can start treating moderation like a personal attack.
"Let us expand with gratitude." Good idea. We'll do it after lunch.
Next, we have Jupiter in Gemini, where Jupiter is considered to be in detriment, which means the great planet of wisdom has been locked in a room with a man explaining cryptocurrency. Here, Jupiter expresses himself through the sign of words, ideas, questions, and starting a sentence before knowing where it's going. This can be curious, witty, and brilliant at joining the dots, but the catch is scattering. Jupiter wants big meaning, Gemini wants more information, and together they can mistake having 37 tabs open for a spiritual path.
Knowledge expands the soul.
I've subscribed to 12 newsletters.
Are they useful?
Probably.
Now let's look at Jupiter in Cancer, where Jupiter is exalted, which means the great planet of growth, generosity, and good fortune has been handed a cardigan, a casserole dish, and a profound emotional attachment to cute mugs. Here, Jupiter expresses himself through home, family, protection, and belonging. At its best, this can give warmth, emotional wisdom, and the ability to make people feel safe enough to unfold. But the downside is overdoing the nurturing. Cancer wants to care, while Jupiter wants more of everything. So this can become smothering people with kindness, adopting every wounded soul within a 5-mile radius, or trying to solve all of human suffering with chicken stew.
There's always room for one more at the table.
Lovely, I've made enough food for 12.
How many people are coming?
3, but one of them looked a bit peckish in 2017.
Sounds good to me.
Next, we have Jupiter in Leo, where expansion has been given a spotlight, a velvet cape, and the emotional support of a standing ovation. Here, Jupiter expresses himself through the sign of confidence, performance, and entering a room like the furniture should be grateful. This can be warm, generous, and wonderfully inspiring. Jupiter in Leo grows through self-expression and encouraging others to shine as well. The wheels come off when confidence becomes theatre, generosity needs applause, and every minor achievement is treated like the opening ceremony of the Olympics.
Life should be celebrated. Good, I've prepared a speech. For what occasion? Me existing.
Next, we have Jupiter in Virgo, where Jupiter is in detriment, so the king of the gods has now been given a clipboard and a filing system. Here Jupiter expresses himself through service, skill, routines, and the noble dream of improving life by correcting it slightly. At its best, this can give practical wisdom and the ability to turn a grand vision into something that actually works. But the flip side is shrinking Jupiter's big picture into a list of tiny problems. Virgo wants precision, while Jupiter wants expansion, so this can become trying to discover the meaning of life with a colour-coded rota.
I bring wisdom, abundance, and the blessings of the heavens.
Excellent. I've made you a checklist.
For the blessings,
For the heavens. They're a bit untidy.
Now let's put Jupiter in Libra, where expansion has been dressed nicely, taught manners, and asked to bring balance to a room full of people who think they're all being perfectly reasonable. Here Jupiter expresses himself through the sign of relationships, beauty, fairness, and saying, "Let's hear both sides," when one side is clearly holding a chair. This can be charming, generous, and deeply principled. The trouble starts when harmony becomes people-pleasing, choices become impossible, and every decision requires a panel discussion.
we must expand through cooperation.
Excellent, I've reached a compromise.
Who with?
Myself, mainly. Next we have Jupiter in Scorpio, where expansion has been handed a black cloak, a locked diary, and several questions nobody wanted answered over dinner. Here Jupiter expresses himself through the sign of depth, intensity, secrets, and looking at someone like their soul has failed a background check. This can be brave, perceptive, and deeply transformative. Jupiter in Scorpio grows through trust, emotional honesty, and the willingness to go into the dark places with a torch. Things get weird when depth becomes obsession, trust becomes testing, and every mild inconvenience starts looking like evidence in a psychological murder board.
The truth will set us free. Eventually. What do you mean eventually? After it confesses.
Next we have Jupiter in Sagittarius, where Jupiter is in domicile, which means he's finally found his horse, his passport, and a very large book about the meaning of everything. Here Jupiter expresses himself through the sign of travel, philosophy, and adventure. This can be optimistic, inspiring, and genuinely wise. Jupiter in Sagittarius grows through exploration and following the horizon. The wheels come off when wisdom becomes preaching, confidence becomes certainty, and every opinion is delivered like it was personally dictated by a mountain.
Truth is found by expanding the mind.
Good, I've booked a flight.
Where are we going?
Further.
Next, let's put Jupiter in Capricorn, where Jupiter is in fall, which means the great planet of expansion has been given a 5-year plan and a performance review. Here, Jupiter expresses himself through the sign of ambition, responsibility, and climbing the mountain while quietly judging everyone who brought unsuitable shoes. This can be disciplined, practical, and quietly successful. Jupiter in Capricorn grows through patience, leadership, and building something real. Things get grim when ambition becomes joyless, faith becomes a spreadsheet, and every blessing has to submit 3 references before being allowed in.
Let us expand towards greatness.
Fine, but use the stairs. No need to be lazy.
Next we have Jupiter in Aquarius, where expansion has been given a manifesto, a group chat, and several radical ideas about how society could be improved if everyone would just stop being so irritating. Here Jupiter expresses himself through the sign of progress, community, and having a vision for the future that requires everyone to attend a meeting. This can be idealistic, original, and socially minded. Things go downhill when belief becomes theory, progress becomes detachment, and saving the world starts to look suspiciously like avoiding eye contact with your neighbour.
Progress comes through shared vision.
Yes, I'll share mine until everyone agrees.
Finally, we have Jupiter in Pisces, where Jupiter is in domicile, so the great planet of expansion has floated home on a cloud of incense, compassion, and emotional whale music. Here Jupiter expresses himself through the sign of dreams, imagination, and feeling sorry for furniture. This can be compassionate, creative, and deeply intuitive. Jupiter in Pisces grows through faith, empathy, and forgiveness. Things get slippery when kindness loses boundaries, faith becomes fantasy, and every red flag is gently rebranded as a spiritual lesson.
Compassion is a sacred gift.
I know, I've forgiven the toaster.
Now let's look at Jupiter in the houses. The first house is the front door of the chart, your first impression, and the version of you that arrives before the explanation does. With Jupiter here, the personality can be big, generous and hard to miss, although there may also be a tendency to overdo it, overpromise, or assume every situation would be improved simply by becoming more involved. But used well, this becomes confidence, warmth, humour, and the ability to encourage others simply by showing up.
Be yourself magnificently. We can apologise for the volume later.
Jupiter in the second house is all about money, possessions, self-worth, and the things we rely on to feel secure. So here, Jupiter can bring generosity and a sense that life is abundant. There may be a natural ability to attract resources, enjoy comfort, and believe that good things are worth having. But Jupiter does like to expand whatever he touches. And in the second house, that can include the shopping basket, the overdraft, and the deeply spiritual conviction that this purchase definitely counts as an investment.
Congratulations, you now understand your true value. Unfortunately, so does your credit card company.
The third house is communication, siblings, neighbours, and the everyday thoughts that run around the mind like unsupervised ferrets. With Jupiter here, there may be a tendency to talk big, think fast, and explain things at a length nobody asked for. Ideas can multiply quickly, and every casual conversation can become a lecture. But at its best, this becomes curiosity, humour, and the ability to inspire others through generous conversation.
Words are gifts. Give them freely, preferably before anyone asks you to stop.
The fourth house is home, family, roots, and the private foundations underneath the life everyone else gets to see. With Jupiter here, home can become a big emotional weather system. There can be too much of a good thing, big feelings, big expectations, and the belief that every problem can be solved by feeding people until they stop resisting. But when the warmth has somewhere steady to land, this becomes emotional generosity, deep belonging, and the ability to create a home where people feel genuinely welcome.
Fill the house with love, laughter, and an abundance of side dishes.
The fifth house is creativity, pleasure, romance, and the things we do because life would be unbearable if it was only washing up and bills. With Jupiter here, joy can become enormous. There may be a love of big romantic gestures, dramatic hobbies, or the belief that fun is not really fun unless it has costumes. This can also become indulgence, attention-seeking, or treating every creative impulse like it deserves a 3-part documentary. But when the enthusiasm finds a purpose, this becomes warmth, confidence, creative generosity, and the ability to remind people that life is supposed to have some sparkle in it.
Play generously, love loudly, and let the inner child have access to glitter.
The sixth house is work, routines, health, chores, and the daily habits that keep life from collapsing into a pile of mugs and unanswered messages. With Jupiter here, everyday life can become very full. There may be big plans for productivity, service, and self-improvement, but also a tendency to overcommit, take on too much, or turn one small routine into a personal development empire. However, when the enthusiasm has somewhere useful to go, this becomes generosity in work, faith in steady progress, and the ability to improve life one practical habit at a time.
Improve one thing today, then obviously improve 9 more.
The seventh house is relationships, partnerships, marriage, and the people we meet face to face. With Jupiter here, other people can seem full of promise. There may be generosity in relationships, a belief in giving people the benefit of the doubt, or a tendency to assume every interesting person is a doorway to a bigger life. However, this can also mean over-idealizing partners, promising too much, or expecting one relationship to carry more meaning than any human with normal needs can reasonably support. But when the optimism has somewhere honest to land, this becomes loyalty, warmth, good faith, and the ability to grow through real partnership.
Open your heart to others. That's where the blessings come from, and most of the plot twists.
The eighth house is intimacy, trust, shared resources, loss, and the deeper material we usually avoid bringing up in polite conversation. With Jupiter here, life can grow through emotional honesty, deep bonds, and facing the things that usually make people suddenly remember they left the oven on. But there can also be too much faith in other people's resources, or a tendency to turn every vulnerable moment into a full spiritual evacuation. However, when the depth has somewhere honest to go, this becomes wisdom through trust, generosity in crisis, and the ability to come through difficult experiences stronger, kinder, and more alive.
Trust deeply, share generously, and let the dark places teach you where the gold is buried.
Now let's move Jupiter into the 9th house. This place is all about travel, philosophy, higher learning, and the great search for meaning. So here, Jupiter is very much at home. This can bring faith, big ideas, and the urge to understand life from the widest possible angle. It can be the placement of the traveller, the teacher, or the person who reads one paragraph of Plato and becomes unbearable for 3 weeks. At its best, Jupiter in the 9th house opens the mind and helps us find meaning beyond the little bubble of everyday life. But the downside is assuming that every big thought is automatically a wise one.
You have glimpsed the bigger picture. Now go and explain it to someone trapped next to you on a train.
The 10th house is career, reputation, public life, and the role we become known for in the world. With Jupiter here, ambition can come with a sense of possibility. There may be big goals, public confidence, helpful mentors, or a belief that success should mean more than just surviving another meeting. However, this can also become overconfidence, chasing status, or assuming that every career move is part of a grand destiny arc with theme music. But when given direction, this becomes leadership, generosity, wisdom in public life, and the ability to grow into a role that lifts other people as well.
Rise boldly, lead generously, and assume the world has room for a bigger version of you.
The 11th house is friends, groups, communities, and the hopes we carry for the future. With Jupiter here, the social world can become big, busy, and full of possibility. There may be generous friendships, helpful networks, big dreams, or a tendency to join every cause, circle, and online community until your notifications start developing a personality. But when the vision has somewhere useful to go, this becomes optimism for the future, faith in people, and the ability to bring others together around something larger than yourself.
Every great dream needs people around it, preferably all talking at once.
The 12th house is solitude, dreams, hidden fears, and the parts of us that operate behind the curtain. With Jupiter here, the inner world can become vast. There may be deep compassion, vivid dreams, or a tendency to find meaning in everything, from a mystical experience to a suspicious-looking pigeon. But at its best, this becomes spiritual generosity, quiet wisdom, and the ability to feel guided, even when life has wandered off into the fog.
Go inward generously. The universe has hidden rooms, and some of them have cake.
And that is Jupiter through all 12 signs and houses. So wherever Jupiter appears in your chart, he tends to bring growth, opportunity, and the dangerous feeling that maybe everything would be better if it was just a little bit bigger. Next time we'll be moving from Jupiter to Mars, which means we're leaving the feast, handing back the philosopher's cloak, and taking up the sword. Jupiter says yes, Mars says move, and the fool asks for directions. Until then, follow the blessing, share the good fortune, and try not to mistake every buffet for a spiritual calling.